Welcome to this ACTO vlog. Today we're delighted to welcome Sarah Worley James, the former chair of ACTO, to be talking with us, and Suzanne Kamani, who is a current director of ACTO. Welcome both of you. I'm Pip Weitz and I'm vice chair of ACTO. So Suzanne, I think you've got some questions for Sarah.
I do. Hi Sarah.
Hi Suzanne.
You've recently written a book about online therapy. Can you tell us a bit more about it and when it's due out?
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure. Well, it's been a very exciting and interesting journey writing it. At the beginning of the, I have to say first lockdown now, don't I? I was approached by Catherine Jackson from PCCS Books to write what she described as a nuts and bolts guide to online counselling. And it's been a really interesting journey because I've had to really kind of pull back and go right back to the nitty-gritty and think about what do we need to know? How do we describe online counselling? And the idea, I'll talk a little bit more about the detail of the chapters in a moment. But the idea is for it to be a really engaging, conversational, not a dry textbook. It's like a really interesting, I guess, overview, introduction for some people, but also overview of everything, as much as it's possible, that you need to know in order to be an online counsellor. Well, before I talk a little bit more about the different aspects that are in the book, is that while I've written it as an all-encompassing guide to online counselling, it's not a replacement for an online training course. Hopefully it will be a really useful accompaniment to any training, and that was one of my thoughts behind writing it as well. The way that I've written it, I hope that people will find it very interesting. It's not, as I said, a dry textbook style. What I've done is really kind of put in my experience, what kind of dilemmas that I've come across and how I've dealt with them. But I've also created 5 characters, I guess, for want of a better word, to represent each of the media. So there's a character for video, audio, telephone, instant messaging and email, and we follow these characters through the book. So they help us, for example, in the opening chapter, to understand the different reasons why somebody might choose to work online, and also the particular medium that they might be drawn to. As we go through and look at some of the ethical dilemmas, some of the different considerations around whether someone's suitable for working online, when we think about boundary issues, I bring these characters in to illustrate in each of the different media how these different areas might come into play. And also we have the counsellor's perspective on how they responded to those ethical dilemmas, how they responded to those issues and concerns. And one of the things that I very much talk about in the early chapters are some of the concerns, some of the questions that counsellors often have when they're considering or beginning to work online. An obvious one that comes up time and time again is, how can you develop a therapeutic relationship? How can you convey empathy, particularly when working in the non-visual media? A really interesting question. And so I help you to kind of think about that, giving examples, again, using these characters to really illustrate how you can express empathy, how you can develop that therapeutic relationship. I talk about in the beginning chapters some of those skills, how you can develop some of those skills, for example, how to accurately read the client's feelings and thoughts in text-based communication. How to, how to connect, how to identify some of those underlying meanings and themes when working with those limited visual cues offered through video. I go on to really give a lot of detail in the Getting Started chapter about all the kind of practical elements that you'll need to be thinking about, the kind of computers, kind of software, thinking about secure email providers, thinking about just lighting, sound, dealing with technical glitches, which we've already had this morning. and how you respond to that will actually have an impact on how well that relationship is developed. Thinking about security. So a lot of those practical issues and questions, which can create some anxiety for people who are perhaps unfamiliar with communicating and working online.
Sarah, I was just wondering if I could come back in here.
Yes,
and because I'm thinking of all the things you're saying, thinking, gosh, this is ticking so many of the boxes. You know, in ACTO, we've been working hard on developing various competencies, both online supervision and online therapy competencies. And I guess that just hearing you talk about those things, you've been having those at the forefront of your mind, perhaps.
Oh, absolutely. As I was going through the book, I very much had those ACTO competencies as, I guess, a foundation, and I very much talk about them, particularly in the ethical practice online chapter, where we're really thinking about confidentiality, establishing the client's identity, for example, suitability, netiquette. Really important to think about netiquette, how we are conducting ourselves.
It really sounds like the characters really bring the material to life in the book as well.
I think so, absolutely, and obviously, there are limits to the examples they can bring. I've tried to develop a really diverse range of characters. In the dilemmas section, where I've come up with kind of boundary examples, different ethical dilemmas, I've also added some further potential dilemmas that could come up with each of the different media. So it's not just tied into that particular character, because there are lots of other examples. And inviting in that chapter, I've given exercises throughout the book for people to kind of think on and reflect on. And in that one, with the characters, I describe how the counsellor responded to those ethical dilemmas. With the further examples that I've given, I've left those open to the reader to use the ACTO competencies and the BACP ethical framework and their professional body framework to consider how they might respond to those particular issues. So hopefully that will give people some food for thought.